Hello and welcome to the show. It is Monday evening after a eventful weekend. We are delighted to be able to join you. Of course, as always, my name is Rory and I'm joined by my very good friends.
Adam and
Andy.
He's here, and we are excited. Welcome to the Anglo-Italian pod. Oh God, what a weekend. Adam, I'm going to start with you first. How was your weekend? Did you have a good one?
I had a really good one, thank you. It felt like I had 77 problems, but the bitch wasn't one. But it was a very enjoyable weekend. How about yours, Rory?
I had a delightful time. Only Saturday, not only was Saturday just, I honestly felt high after that game had finished. Just the incredible ending to that game. It took me a while to come down from that. Then there was Sunday, and there was an almighty humbling in the coming for some United fans. Andy, how was your weekend?
Up until about 4:30 yesterday, it was actually quite a good weekend. Had some good time looking after the dogs, and yeah, it was just generally a nice, relaxing weekend. And then it went a little bit downhill yesterday evening.
And then it happened. But before we get there, guys, we're going to wait. We're going to start how we usually do with a few stories from the lower leagues. And we're starting in Italy here. Now, there's one story. We're going to start at the bottom, work our way up, I think. And this is from a page on Twitter called @CCalcistica, who is a fantastic follow if you're into calcio and Italian football. And he posted about Sora in the Eccellenza. They've just been promoted to Serie D already. It's only March. They've been promoted. They lost their first game of the season 1-0, and they've gone on to win the following 24 games out of 25, making them by far the champions there. They've got promoted to Serie D with an average age in the squad of 24. I did a bit of digging. Their top scorer, though, you'll be happy to know, is a 37-year-old striker who's got 19, closely followed by a 38-year-old centre-back who's got 13 goals. They're Claudio Corsetti and Andrea Constantini. So we will have to keep an eye out for them in Serie D. But I love that. 37 and 38 years old. A centre-back, 13 goals. It's incredible.
They're in the prime. What can we say?
They must have some set-piece routine to die for. The centre-back is scoring 13 goals.
I was thinking their set-piece coach must be unbelievable. Like, we were talking about John Carew on Football Manager. Just every single one, like, straight from the corners. Moving up from Serie D, there was a video there as well of the atmosphere. The stand looked packed. It was banging. Moving up from Serie D, in Serie B, Sud Tirol, who are still pushing for promotion, kind of won the fairy tales of Serie B this year. Their top scorer, 32-year-old Adogwu, he's playing his first season in Serie B. His career's kind of been dogged by injury a little bit, but he is playing in Romelu Lukaku's boots. He scored 8 goals this season, and he was out injured, and he was kind of going through a bit of a rough time, and he's a huge fan of Lukaku, and apparently his wife managed to get hold of his boots, and now since he started playing in them, he's now Sud Tirol's top goal scorer. So love that, with a few bangers in there as well, decent little poacher. And the last story we're going to go to for Italy, I'm not sure if you've seen this, guys. If I say the name Andrea Compagno, anybody heard the name?
No, it doesn't ring a bell.
He is currently Italy's highest goal scorer in all of Europe. He has 17 goals in 29 games for FCSB in Romania, so what was formerly Steaua Bucharest. And he is getting called up. He's being called up to the provisional Italy squad by Mancini.
Wow.
He has played most of his career in San Marino. He was playing for Tre Fiori as of 3 years ago. He's gone to Romania, started tearing it up, and he's been called up to the national squad. He's 26 years old. I was watching a bit of him. He's a big old boy. He's like 6'4". He's massive. Classic target man, big and strong, but actually pretty quick feet. And some of his goals, some nice little finishes. So a bit of a fairy tale story there. And what I like is that it shows Mancini's kind of looking a bit abroad, looking in different places to try and finally get Italy to a World Cup. But I love this story.
Sounds very Luca Toni-esque, doesn't it? Where he was kind of
Exactly.
coming to the latter parts of his career, where he started to come into the national side, and he was quite nimble with his feet as well, wasn't he? So,
It feels like
yeah.
Mancini is trying to do anything to get a reliable number 9 for Italy. Like he'll do anything to get a reliable number 9.
Might have to naturalise a few players, right, Andy? Soon.
Yeah, I think if it, like I said, if it takes it to Romania to find that number 9, then so be it.
He is absolutely tearing it up. So I'm hoping he gets called up to the full squad and we see him get his cap. But yeah, a beautiful, beautiful story there. Guys, we are going to start the main show, and we're going to start with the Premier League, and then we're going to go to Serie A. But we're going to see you in the Premier League right after I do this every single time I forget the video. Right after this. And here we are. It is Premier League time. There's only one place to start. Andy, this is your chance to vent your frustration. Are we ready?
No. I'm gonna have to be, aren't I? Seeing your smug face is really ruining my Monday. I was over it until I got into the pod and see your smug ass face, but fair enough. I mean, yeah, I've been thinking about 24 hours of how to sort of put this into words that don't contain too many expletives.
Please.
But I think as the expression goes, it was a game of two halves. I think, I know a lot of people accuse Manchester United of going into the game, with, I guess, maybe like an arrogant mindset or overconfident. But, over the past couple of weeks, we've beaten Barcelona, we've won a cup final, got through, to the latter stages of the FA Cup. We've had a game every sort of 3 or 4 days, and we've come through the challenges that have been presented to us. Sometimes you're coming from behind. So there wasn't really much reason to think that Sunday would go the way that it did. I think looking at the lineup was more or less the strongest lineup we could put out, so there's no sort of excuses there. I think the only change I would have made to that lineup was maybe Wan-Bissaka coming in defence for Dallo. And the first half was reasonably evenly matched. Liverpool had a lot of possession the first 20 minutes, as you'd expect, playing at home. United came into it towards the end of the first half, and the bit that seemed to really, the two killer blows was the timing of when the first 2 Liverpool goals went in. So the first Liverpool goal, I reckon, could have been avoided. Dallo was so far out of position to the point I sat next to my mate, who's unfortunately a Liverpool fan, going, that's going to go in, because he was caught well out, dragged the centre back out. And to be fair, what Gabko did after that, in terms of stepping in and that first and then hitting it, fantastic finish. Can't really argue too much with that one, to be honest. And then obviously the second goal, as a manager, the first, you probably sat there at half time going, right, let's get back to basics, keep it solid. But I don't think anybody could have foreseen what happened in the second half. And I think, I'll say just before we came on there, the only time I can think of a capitulation of this scale of 2, top quality teams playing each other was when Germany did just beat Brazil back in 2014 World Cup. It's the only other time I can think that, a bunch of, generally speaking, top class players have just had a collective meltdown. And I think, there's not a single player that, normally you'd have 4 or 5 underperforming players, and some of them come out of a bit of credit. In this particular case, nobody in that Manchester United squad, from keeper to defence, midfield to attack, could come out of that and go, I did my bit. De Gea, as much as he makes the odd worldly saves, and I have praised him a fair bit this season, but the interest of balance, he doesn't come off this line, he doesn't claim high balls, as much as he doesn't sort of make himself big when it comes to saving it. And the two sort of near post goals that he conceded were just embarrassing, to be honest with you.
Do you think? You kind of said that, like, throughout the squad, obviously nobody came out with any credit, and we'll talk in particular about players who have got less credit than others. But I think, do you think Ten Hag takes any of the blame for this? I think he made a few switches in the team that I didn't really understand. Like, Rashford has been absolutely smashing it out on the left, and we were saying pre-game him against Trent could be an absolute feast if he plays that right, and he shifts him into the middle. He keeps Weghorst kind of deep in this midfield. Do you think he kind of got it wrong with Liverpool? Like,
yeah,
he didn't expect the players to shit the bed, but did he?
I think with the benefit of
hindsight,
yeah, I think it would have been hindsight. I think the reason why he played Weghorst in that slightly deeper role is because he's done that against Barcelona, did that against Newcastle. And to be fair, that yielded results. And it's not like Rashford doesn't play through the centre. And unfortunately, there isn't exactly an abundance of striking options as a backup because Martial seems to be permanently unavailable at the moment. And I've said numerous times before that a striker is very much needed at Manchester United, and Weghorst is not it. He's a stopgap solution who unfortunately does some things well, but doesn't really score the goals, which is a bit of such a part. So yeah, you could certainly make an argument that putting Rashford on the left, currently into the right, would have been a better choice, but you can still understand why he chose there. I think the other decision as well was Dalla at right back. I thought he was extremely lucky to get a start. We all saw the League Cup final. We got roasted by San Maximan. For a good first half, got replaced at half time. Wan-Bissaka sort of shut that down. And I think that potentially could have made a difference. And I think with the amount of games that Fred has played recently, as much as his fitness is fantastic, there could have maybe been an argument for putting in Sabitzer from the start. But I think either way, that I think a lot of that is probably going down the excuses route. I think even if you have played a lot of games in a short space of time, and even if there's a lot of players who've played probably a lot of football, that there's still no excuse for the shit show that took place.
No.
I think, like I said, Bruno Fernandes, I know you're not a fan of him generally, but I am, and obviously we'll go on to that. But I felt that as a captain, you kind of have to be able to read the room a little bit, if that makes sense. I think, when things aren't going your way, you have to sort of lead by example a little bit and, at least do the basics right, at least sort of close down, whereas he kind of descended into a bit of petulance.
Well, I think what the clip that kind of cemented it in my mind, I was like, this guy doesn't give a fuck, is that one where he's chasing Gakpo. I think it's Gakpo. It's Harvey Elliott, and he tries to kick him, misses him. Harvey Elliott continues, and then Fernandes just walks the opposite direction of the attack into midfield. He just walks away. He's like, I'm just going to go stand over here. And I was like, if I've seen players at Arsenal put in absolute shit shows of shifts at Anfield, and we've got battered, but I've never seen a player just completely give up like Fernandes did. And I think if I was a United fan now, I don't care how good a footballer he is, what he's done in the past, kind of similar to how Xhaka was when he threw his shirt on the pitch and threw a massive tantrum. I'd be saying I don't want to see that guy in the starting 11 for the foreseeable until he shows us that he gives a shit. Like, how do you feel about him now? Because now as a character, he's potentially not up to it.
Yeah, and I think that's a really disappointing thing, because I think with United fans, I think he's got enough credit in the bank overall to sort of ride through it. But that I've seen those kind of performances be the end of the captaincy, certainly for players. I think if you use Arsenal as an example, William Gallas, Granit Xhaka, they've put in. They both had those games in which the manager's gone, actually, maybe you're not cut out for manager. And sometimes, should that mean be cut from the squad? No, like I said, I think he's got enough credit in the bank to sort of get through that. But certainly, as a captain, I think if I was Ten Hag, I'd make a statement and go, right, you're not playing on Thursday. And, somebody else captains the side. I think personally, someone like Casemiro or Varane, maybe someone's a bit calmer in that respect. So I think looking at the question we've got on the comments here from 20 United, and I think pointing to that is where Ten Hag will earn his money. is we've been battered 7-0. There's nothing that can be done about it, unfortunately. It's happened, and it's going to remain there for years. I think ultimately the big test for Ten Hag as a coach and the players as well would be how they react afterwards. They've got
sorry. So just to read the question, the only real question I have is whether United loss will carry on and will they now have a bad run of form? Will it affect their UEL campaign? So how do you see the next couple? Like, do you think that Ten Hag got them in early for training today and like they were all there straight away? Do you think he's going to make big changes? Do you think this has lasting effects? Because this is something that you kind of just need to shut the door on and pretend it didn't happen, right?
Yeah, it's an unknown. It's difficult to say. I think United have shown signs of being resilient, but like in the 33 years I've been alive, I've never seen my team lose 7-0. And I don't. So I can't. I know I'm not in the know or anything like that at all. So I genuinely don't know. I would like to think that probably for the Europa League game, he'll make quite a few changes to make a point. Some of the younger players who've been in and around the squad will get a start and a chance to impress. And then the next game's against Southampton, who've got the road problems, but will be banged up for it. I think it's how they react in those two games will be a really telling point. Because I think if they go through those two games unbeaten in both and win both of them, then we could at least turn around and say, okay, last Sunday was a disaster, but they've reacted in the right way. Whereas if they lose those couple of games, one loss could turn into 4 or 5 very, very easily. So it's worrying. And I think it's still a confirmation that for all there has been an improvement. Yesterday's result doesn't change the improvement that's been in place since Ten Hag took over. It's a night and day improvement compared to what it was last season. But there is still ultimately a fair group of players whose long-term future isn't going or shouldn't be at Manchester United.
I think what would concern me, Adam, I'm going to get your thoughts on it as well. What would concern me is that United have had these games where they've just held a few goals. Like they conceded 6 to City, conceded 4 to Brentford in the past. There have been a few games where you could say when it goes against them, they've not been able to stand up. But if we look at Liverpool, because I think we've done United. United were terrible. I enjoyed seeing Fernandes really upset. But if we talk about Liverpool, it looks like, and now as United were getting battered, in the back of my mind was just, oh, fuck, we're the next team to go to Anfield. Like, that's all that was in my head was we've got to go to Anfield next. We've got to go to Anfield next. Liverpool looked bloody good. Salah was back on form. Gakpo and Nunez are... I've been banging the Nunez drum all season. People have been saying he's not been doing well. He has had a bloody good season so far. He gets a couple of goals. It seems like that front three on the same weekend that Bobby Firmino said he's going to be moving on at the end of the season, which is a sad time for Liverpool fans. It does seem like that front three is starting to come together, right?
Definitely. We said it in the last pods that we felt that this was going to be a close match, but I think what we started to see was just how Gakpo is going to be kind of revolutionized into this squad. We knew about Jota coming back into it as well, but I think you're starting to see a different dynamic. For me, personally, I got out of that match was how mature Harvey Elliott was as well. Like, I felt like, he was the little spark that kind of created the kind of outlet for Liverpool at times. And because I expected, and I was speculating with a friend on Sunday, I thought they might go defensively to match up and counteract what maybe, say, Man United were going to do in the attacking kind of third. But actually, I thought it was quite brave of Klopp to put Harvey Elliott into that mix because I felt like he was kind of that player that could play the ball, run with the ball, which also gives Man United that kind of trouble. And I thought when I looked at the balance of the wing backs, so as Andy alluded to, Dalot is one, Luke Shaw hasn't been completely solid in my eyes. And then you think about the two midfielders that were possibly going to be the protectors. So Casemiro, we know he can do a very good job. Unfortunately, didn't have a good job in this particular match.
That second goal was pretty
Fred
grim.
in particular as well.
Yeah.
Fred was dragged out for that first one. And I think that's the kind of pockets that I think Harvey Elliott kind of takes it around those players or plays the through ball. And that's the difference. I felt like that was really mature. Like previously, I would have said he still lacks that maturity and how he kind of thinks about how he should play the ball. But actually, I saw a different side. So I think everyone should be a bit more worried about Liverpool and what they can do. I think that definitely puts them back into contention for the top 4 race as well.
Definitely. And I think with Harvey Elliott, he made a really good point. He had 7 passes into the final third, 3 key passes and 1 possession back 10 times. So he was doing all the jobs in midfield that he needed to do. I thought, honestly, he was fantastic. I really enjoyed watching him. I think Gakpo, the finishes he puts in were just beautiful finishes. Kind of reminded me of watching him at the World Cup. You're like, oh, there he is, right? That's the guy that we thought was going to be here. Nunez is just always in the right place. It feels like he's just within that 6-yard box. He's absolutely lethal. Like, yeah, we've seen him miss sitters. We've seen he still needs to calm down a little bit. Some of his performances are a bit erratic, but I think like Liverpool had to move early for him. I think he's come to the Premier League a little bit too early. They had to be early to scare off other clubs to make sure that they got him. And you're now seeing him get used to the Premier League. I think he's going to be a real danger when he gets like properly into that team. That front three for Liverpool looked incredible. The defense still is gettable. It's still, you can still get at that defense. Like United showed it towards the end of the first half. When United did get on the break and did start creating chances, they looked vulnerable. But I think the most important thing for Liverpool is that they seem to have the belief back now, and that team, that after this, they know they're going to go on and like they can start putting a real run together. The only problem for them is that their run of fixtures is pretty rough now. So they've now got next weekend. Well, they've got Bournemouth away next. So, well, that's more difficult than you think. But then they've got City and Chelsea coming up soon. They've got City away. Then they've got Chelsea at home. Then they've got Arsenal at home. I think Chelsea away, then Arsenal at home. So they've got some really big games coming up. So this is the time for them to really see what they've got. But this big win will definitely help them, at least in the belief. I was really, really impressed. For United, I'm sorry, I just did enjoy it. I've seen a lot of United fans going on about, and I know it's not you, Andy, because you're level-headed, but there was a lot of United fans going on about quadruples and the best centre-back partnership in the league and all sorts. And I thought, this is just the best thing I needed to see.
To be fair, I don't think there was that. I think 95% of Manchester United fans are quite realistic about.
No, of course, like 95% of all support bases.
It's just unfortunately, it's just the balance you get online that obviously make those random predictions. I think realistically, the realistic aim was top 4 in the trophy, which looks like, despite yesterday, is still going to be achieved. And I think most fans acknowledge that until there's a change upstairs, that signifies a good step in the right direction. So, but I can understand why a lot of people are unfortunately happy.
Oh God, it was just wonderful. What a Sunday. Anyway, Andy, we're going to put you out of your misery and we're going to move on. You can breathe a sigh of relief now. You never have to talk about it again, right? You never have to talk about it again. And we're going to talk about Arsenal 3, Bournemouth 2, and bloody hell, we made hard work of this. We made really hard work of this, conceding within 9 seconds. I think it was 9.11 seconds. Roughly the same time Usain Bolt finished the 100 meters, I think. We were 1-0 down to Philip Billing. I did not see that coming. And I don't know what you guys thought. It was a really clever kickoff routine. Some of their players were already in our half, VAR, but I'll give it them. What did you think when you saw that first goal go in, Adam? Because I was confident up until about half time. And I was like, shit, we might not do this.
I think there was certain patterns of play that Gary O'Neill clearly targeted, and that was one of them. So he clearly identified from the off that maybe Arsenal are a bit too relaxed, and certainly that was told by the way they played. I mean, if you think about the bodies that Bournemouth committed, if that gone wrong, you're going the other end and potentially scoring. This is the thing. This is the way it could have played out. However, I think they really did kind of go to the plan. They really articulated the plan. They did it to the letter. And it was just probably just those little moments. I think that's the unfortunate thing about Bournemouth is they have those lapses of concentration. Now, we'll talk about the last goal, but the other 2 goals in particular, I just feel like, yeah, you could have done better in sort of defending those scenarios. Granted, White, you can't stop him from headering it, and it was VAR that kind of showed it bounced over the line essentially. But yeah, apart from that, I think that's the kind of elements that Bournemouth are lacking this season. It's not just this game; it's been other games as well. But yeah, they played it really close. I mean, you have to give it to Bournemouth. We knew they were a little bit of a counter-attacking threat. But yeah, just unfortunate. I think it's just that little bit of quality, and the fact that Arsenal managed to bring it. And just to bring it to my scenes on Saturday evening, I was at a party, family gathering. We were all kind of around this TV, Soccer Saturdays kicking off, and it's Paul Merson talking about this last-minute corner. And we all, before that corner was taken, we said, it's going to happen. We knew it was going to happen, and it bloody well happens, doesn't it? Because it's just
I knew it was going to happen. I knew it was
wasn't
going to
it?
happen this.
Yeah.
I knew it was going to happen this week. Because I remember the previous week, I had started giving it some fire on the WhatsApp group, and I was literally sat there right at the time, and I was thinking, oh, this is going to be fucking funny. And then I was like, no, I can't say anything. I'm going to wait till the game is finished, and then I will make comments. And I'm glad that I did that on this occasion.
Well, I'm gutted. Next time, just send a message. Let's see what happens. But I think, like, to be honest, Bournemouth could have gone 2-0 up. Ramsdale made an incredible save really soon after the first goal as well. Like, Ramsdale made some unbelievable saves this game. And I feel like there is a slight area that Arsenal need to look at here, like, because I don't know how sustainable it is to keep coming back from games in the last minute. Now, between the Villa game and this game, we have also kept 2 clean sheets. So you have to say, look, this isn't every game, but we do have these lapses where you go, okay, guys, just chill out a bit. And I think we need, there's definitely a conversation to be had there in something, an area of concern. I think Thomas Partey for the first goal was completely out of position, lost track of his runner completely. He does the same for the corner as well. So defensively, he was absolutely shocking. And you could say that both goals were kind of his fault, or he was a major part of it. So I think there's a in transition, we need to be looking at what we're doing. But that being said, the sheer refusal to lose in this team is honestly, I love every last one of them. Like that last goal, and like Reiss Nelson, the story for Reiss Nelson as well is like, not only within this squad, not only have we got these players that we've brought in that are doing incredibly well, all the big moments tend to be Hale End graduates. We've had the Saka moments, we've had the Smith Rowe moments, and now we've had the Reiss Nelson moment, Nketiah moments. But like Reiss Nelson, his career, people were super excited about him when he came through. He was like the player at Arsenal. He was going to be one of the best players for England. Super hot prospect. Things between injuries, managerial changes, failed loan moves. His career just hasn't panned out so far how you would like. He's still 23, and he's now scored 3 goals and got 2 assists, and he's played 87 minutes of football. Like Arteta knows how to coach wingers, and even before he scored this goal, and this is going to sound like revisionism now, but I was honestly going to tweet saying Nelson has been class since he came on. He just stayed out wide. The cross he put in for Ben White's equaliser was an unbelievable cross. And he had that Bournemouth wing back every single time he was at him. And I think he genuinely had an incredible performance. That goal was the coolest finish in the least cool circumstances. I don't know how he kept his head. And it's now my screensaver on my phone. I don't know if you're able to see it, but the Caravaggio painting that is all the players reacting to that goal. There's like people on the deck, people crying. Did you see Arteta high-fiving that kid and then being like, oh crap, whose kid is this? And having to like take him to security. Like the whole stadium collectively lost its mind. And I think there's been so many moments, and it feels like every week and every episode I say this now, but so many moments of this season where you're just going to look back on it regardless of what happens and go, that was a great moment. And like even on Twitter, there was a thread of videos of people from around the world, like commentators, Arsenal support groups, just celebrating that goal. It felt like a huge moment. Like it's been compared to the Arshavin goal against Barcelona, the Welbeck goal against Leicester. the one thing I don't want it to have in common with those goals is that both of those goals counted for nothing. We went to Nou Camp and lost after that Arshavin goal and the Welbeck goal. We ultimately lost the title. So I really hope this goal counts. That's how I want it to be different. But it was a really incredible moment. And I think Arteta will still have them in the training ground going, this isn't good enough. But the belief, again, that team gets, I think it's good. I think it's just incredible. What a game! And you have to say, Bournemouth, fair play. Like fair play. They genuinely put up a fight, and they were a team. It was two teams that were fighting for very different things, and we saw a proper scrap. I would have rather had a 2-0 comfortable win, I think, but I really, really enjoyed it on Saturday. But I'm gonna end Arsenal there, unless anybody's got anything else to say. Any words for Bournemouth or Arsenal?
No advancements, but yeah, fair play to Bournemouth. I thought they gave you a game. That's the thing. I don't think we anticipated that, but they gave you a game.
I think Bournemouth are trying, with the resource they have available to them, are trying their absolute hardest. Like I said, I think even if they do go down this season, I think it certainly won't be for lack of effort. It'll most definitely be for lack of backing, but not lack of effort by any stretch. I think those are the kind of games where teams win titles. You see Leicester get those last minute winners over Man City when they win it. I've seen Manchester United do it quite a few times in the Fergie years. It's one of those, when it's your year, and that's the kind of that's the kind of performance that happens when things are going in a positive direction. So they can't keep doing that because they will come unstuck at some point. And hopefully, I guess for an Arsenal fan, they would hope that maybe that moment comes after they've won the league. But
then just take your foot off the gas completely. I don't give a shit.
Manchester City are not going to lose too many games between now and the end of the season, if any at all. So
we saw in their performance against Newcastle, that was clinical. Like Newcastle should have got something out of that game. They had the chances, but City, like the second after Newcastle miss an opportunity, City go up and get the second, game over. Like you can see City going on a run now. This is when they kick into gear. And I'm like, we need to be perfect now. We just have to be faultless. And it's absolutely terrifying. But we are going to move on and we're going to go for next. Shall we talk? Do we want to talk Southampton? Do we want to talk Brighton? Do we want to talk Wolves?
Forest, Everton.
Yeah,
Everton. Adam, take us through it.
I thought that was a really interesting game. Probably not the purest of football games, let's put it that way, because between the two of them, I think the match of the day kind of showed that they couldn't put a passing move together, which was surprising for Everton, given that they had Lampard's philosophy of football, which is just pass, 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 right? But it was just, I felt like we spoke about on Thursday's pod that we felt like maybe Nottingham Forest would have the quality in this match. But Everton actually turned up for the first 45 minutes. They actually did have a good performance. And there was periods of it where they seemed like they were absorbing a lot of the Forest pressure, a lot of their attacks. It didn't seem like Forest necessarily had a good idea of what to do. But when you have a striker like Brennan Johnson, who just seems like a cut above the rest, he's got obviously that heritage with Nottingham Forest. His dad used to play for them. He's been brought up through the youth academy. He really wants to do well for the club. I think that really helps with a club like Nottingham Forest. And it was just great to see just how contrasting and how end-to-end the match was. But the other thing to highlight here is how Everton really do lack a centre forwards. They really did struggle in that second half, where there was opportunities where if I was playing on a Wednesday night, I'd be whipping that ball into the box, but no one is running into the box. So they are reliant on the likes of Damari Gray or someone to kind of run off, like the winger or the attacking player. You had Seamus Coleman almost being the attacking outlet, and that's not a great thing to kind of call about when he's supposed to be a right back.
So he's also, I'm sorry, Seamus, but he's also getting on a bit as well. Like,
his pace ain't there. He hasn't got the stamina that he used to have. But yeah, just final word. I feel like that's the area that Everton are going to struggle for the rest of the season. They are going to be reliant on Damari Gray, potentially by the look of things, because Neil Maupay came on with like a couple minutes ago. He's not fancied. that leaves you with a real dilemma of who's going to score those important goals. I just couldn't see it. And I know this is one of those games where you kind of expect to get a win if you want to stay in the league. I think they're going to struggle for the rest of the season. I know there's worse sides, but I still think that's the issue.
I think Dyche alluded to that in previous interviews, though. He's basically said that everyone needs to chip in. And I think, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, his fitness issues are well documented. I think it's fair to say he can't be relied upon. Neil Maupay, I thought admittedly it was a smart-ish signing when it first happened. But, I thought it'd at least get, not maybe 20 goals, but maybe 9 or 10 goals. Yeah. Enough goals to at least make a contribution. But that clearly hasn't happened. So they're very much stuck with it, really. And I think they will, by sheer good coaching and organisation, bail themselves out of it. Because I think, if you look at Leeds and you look at West Ham, like they're worse sides than Everton at the moment with worse coaches.
The only thing that concerns me for Everton is their run of fixtures. So they've got Brentford at home next, and then they've got Chelsea away, Tottenham at home, United away, Fulham at home. They've got Palace away. We did it on the last show. We talked about Palace away. Maybe you get something. Newcastle at home, Leicester away, Brighton away, City at home, Wolves away, and then Bournemouth at home on the final day. I can't see a game where they get a win there, honestly.
I don't know, actually, because I think under normal circumstances, you would be absolutely right. But if you look at where Tottenham are this season with their capacity to capitulate, if you look at Chelsea with their almost Everton-like inability to score goals, just with a more expensively assembled bunch of players that can't score any goals. There is games that they could probably still get something out of. You might not necessarily expect it, but I think a bit like we did against Arsenal in the first league game they played against, there's still a potential there, because I think what Dyche will do is that he'll organise them to not concede too many, and I think they will nick something out of those games. Plus, I think the other side of it is, where do West Ham start picking up points? Because I don't see them picking up too many. I think we should go on to that next, to be fair.
That is a very nice segue, Andy. That is a very nice segue, and we're going to go for Brighton absolutely battering the Hammers. And it was rough viewing. Now, Ben Johnson is a player that I've been quite excited about at West Ham. I've seen him play a few times, and I was like, okay, this is a player that could keep an eye on. Now, I'm not saying he's the only one. I don't even know why I'm really singling him out. I just know that for 2 of the goals, he was completely left asleep and needs to learn how to turn his neck a little bit, because they were running completely behind him with all the space in the world. But it was grim viewing for West Ham. Friend of the show, Tom, I'm just finding the tweet. He listens to the West Ham Way podcast, and the intro to the show was, "What a shower of shit we witnessed at the Amex on Saturday. When is enough going to be enough?" That is the intro to their podcast. Andy, I'm going to start with you. It looks like Moyes has lost it now, right?
I mean, we've been saying that for a couple of weeks, haven't we? And he's still in the job.
Well, they got a 4-0 last week, and it looked like he turned it round.
Yeah, it's just really quite rude for them not to sack him before this pod as well.
It's going to be tomorrow, isn't it?
Yeah, probably. Tomorrow, first thing, 9 o'clock, he'll be sacked. But I think what seems... with David Moyes, it's like he's one of those managers. You're not going to get free-flowing football. You should never expect it. But when what you bring to the table is meant to be defensive solidarity and organisation and, a fighting spirit in that team, and that deserts you, that's when you know your time is up. Because you can tolerate bad football if it's yielding results, and you can see... you can see it as he's at least implementing what style he wants to have the team. Whereas defensively, they look, it was an absolute shambles. Each of the goals was just schoolboy defending. I mean, the first goal for the penalty was just an absolute shit show. It was just like, you don't just bundle back into the back of somebody, even without VAR, and not expect a penalty to be given. I think, I think Matoma's an absolutely wonderful player, by the way. But Brighton have done it again. I think
Yes.
he would 100% fit in, at an Arsenal or somewhere like that very, very easily. But no, with West Ham, they just haven't. Again, for a club that have actually spent quite a bit of money, they haven't replaced the quality. I think with Ogbonna, he's been there a few years. I think they should have moved him on a long time ago. There's whether there's any truth in it, I don't know, but there seems to be a little bit of accusations towards Declan Rice that maybe he sees his future elsewhere. His interviews, I think some West Ham fans have commented, feels like he's absolving himself of any sort of blame. God, it's more a collective thing, and I think that's maybe proving a bit of irritation. But I think West Ham fans are not usually a happy bunch anyway. I mean, they've not been happy since they moved to the London Stadium.
No, well, that's true.
For about the past 5 years, they only ever seen 2 or 3 games away from pretty much outright mutiny. And I think with Moyes, I think the only reason why he's probably still in the job is that there doesn't seem to be any replacements available.
Especially someone who's going to come in and do that saving relegation. He's usually the person you bring in to save you from relegation.
Exactly. And
just like, where do you go from here?
And the other person you bring in is at Everton. So I don't really, if they do sack David Moyes, I don't really see who they could bring in that would be like, yep, you could do it. They might well get there through sheer force of just being slightly less shit. But I think as well, I mean, if you look at Scamacca, I think one of the frustrations that West Ham fans have is that he's not had enough time on the pitch. They paid 40 odd million for him or something like that. Like big money, and he doesn't really get regular starts. And I think for any striker to really get a run of game, they have to give him a run of games. You have to give him a run of games together, and I think he does provide a presence in the box. But for whatever reason, Moyes clearly doesn't fancy him because he brought in Danny Ings. And I think there'd be a benefit to maybe going a bit more attacking and putting both of them up front because you need goals. And goals is what's going to get you out of that relegation scrap. But I think Moyes will eventually lose his job because it feels like the players don't seem to be buying into what he's doing, and he's certainly lost the backing of the fans. So yeah, I don't see that lasting too much longer.
Grim times at the London Stadium, but Adam, Brighton, they are finding themselves. They have 3 games in hand on 4th place Tottenham, and they are only, my maths is terrible, 7 points behind them. Now, I was looking at their games in hand. They have got to play. I thought I wrote this down, but it's gone now. They've got to play Palace at home, Bournemouth away, and Newcastle away. Now, all of those games, you could arguably say, apart from Newcastle away, but that's not as difficult as it used to be, you could make an argument for Brighton winning all of those games. Do you think Brighton is still there to make the push for at least Europa League?
Definitely. When you've got players like Casido coming back into the fray as well, we talk about
and he signed a contract as well.
Signed a new contract just prior to the game, obviously till 2027. But more importantly, just the way he comes into it, obviously from that break of not getting the move that he desired and still puts in a performance like that. I mean, that's a world away from what we've said about Declan Rice and maybe Bruno Fernandes in terms of attitude and how you apply yourself into a game where he could have easily sulked in this. But he knows he's not going to get himself a chance to play football if he does that attitude. And that's De Zerbi's kind of philosophy. You don't want to be here? Cool. We'll just let you go elsewhere. And then he did that with Trossard. So that really kind of tells you what you need to know. And I think it's interesting how De Zerbi talks about Lewis Dunk prior to this match as well, because he's been a diehard, obviously a regular, but it is kind of from the back onwards that they seem to be so solid in every department now. We used to joke about De Zerbi being open, expansive football, lots of goals, both sides. But actually, you saw a completely different, maturer side against West Ham. I appreciate it's a West Ham side that's really poor at the moment. But they have got their moments. And I think it was just made easier by West Ham and certain players like Jared Bowen, who gave away that poor penalty, for example. And it was just left open for someone of Brighton's quality. Like you allude to, though, definitely could see them getting 7 points, which would definitely close that gap between them and Spurs. So really excited about what Brighton could do for the rest of this season. It's definitely going to be interesting between them, Fulham, and possibly Spurs for that mix.
I was just looking through their past matches. They've only, like, the last time they conceded more than one goal was the 21st of January. Like, and even going back then, they like 5-1 against Middlesbrough, 4-1 against Everton, 3-1 against Southampton. Like, they don't concede many goals. They got a few clean sheets in there as well, like 2-1 against Liverpool. Yeah, you're right. Defensively, they are a lot stabler or more stable than we kind of maybe anticipated. But yeah, a hell of a run for them. Again, as Andy said, Matoma absolutely smashing it up. Just unbelievable player. They are going to get so much money for him. It's going to be over 100 million when he eventually leaves. He is going to get, they're going to get so much for him. And McAllister as well. Just another unbelievable performance from him. I can't help but think, and I know they're not exactly like the same kind of player, but I can't help but think that Chelsea maybe bought the wrong Argentinian midfielder because the guy is absolutely killing it. And I think there's going to be a lot of teams queuing up for him as well. But we are, I think, because I'm very aware of time, we're about halfway through the show, more or less. We are going to go to Serie A. We need to discuss Calcio. There wasn't a lot of goals. Guys. Sunday was a slow day. But I promise you it's worth tuning in for. We will see you in Italy after this. Ciao, benvenuti, come stai? Welcome to the Serie A section, and it is time for some calcio. And we're going to start with, no, not that one. We're going to start with a Moo Classic. Where did I put it? Another Moo Classic. Roma 1, Juventus 0. Roma have 0 opportunities. Juve have all the opportunities. And of course, it is 1-0 to Mourinho through his, I think, his reincarnate on the pitch, Mancini. Now, we've talked about Mancini being a bell end, and Mourinho isn't that much of a bell end. But it does feel like he's kind of Mourinho's spirit player on the pitch. I think he epitomizes everything that is Moo. So many moments I loved about this game. As the goal went in, the completely polar opposite reactions of Tammy Abraham and Mourinho. So Tammy Abraham just bombs it down the line, and Mourinho is just there still writing on his paper. He did his classic thing of running off the bench to shouting at the ref. There was just so much to enjoy in this game. But Adam, I'm going to start with you. What did you think of this game? I thought it wasn't a classic, but it was an interesting one.
Far from it. It was very boring in the first half, and I was wondering whether I actually tuned into the right match because it was a poor match. It could have easily gone the way of Juve as well, because Pretizio in the first half has to pull off an amazing save from Vlahovic. Vlahovic, who we mentioned in the last pod, being someone that's gone under the radar a lot, purely because he has no shooting boots at the moment. But that said, obviously there was a little bit of pressure just prior to that Mancini goal. So, I mean, obviously Juve were pushing it. They were trying to get opportunities. They weren't necessarily working it because they were just kind of crossing it and expecting someone to get on the end of it. But the problem was it was so high. For the likes of Ibanez and Mancini, they were just clearing it out very easily. And then Mancini, I don't know what he was doing in that third of the pitch, but when he smacks it, that was absolutely glorious just for the scenes. The scenes itself was just glorious to see. And it was beautiful because you could see this was the Mourinho tactic. This was their plan. It was literally get the goal, shut up shop. And do you know, towards the end of the match, you even saw the substitutions being really articulate in the sense of Karsdorp coming in to just try and run it, try and do more with the ball and just take it to the other end of the pitch, really frustrate Juventus. And Juventus didn't necessarily, I didn't feel confident that they would get themselves back into the match. No. They certainly had the better of the opportunities. Di Maria almost scoring, he had that free kick as well. If it doesn't get deflected, it might have gone in. But yeah, we'll talk about Moses Kane and his 42nd appearance in this match as well, which was just brilliant. But interesting stat, obviously Mourinho has now taken points off the top 3 in Serie A again this season. So this adds to that tally as well. I appreciate they're not in that top 4 mix, but arguably on form. We were talking about on Thursday, they
Mhm.
should be second in the league without that points deduction. So, yeah, not a great game for Juventus or Allegri, but good result for Mourinho. I'm sure he's purring. He'll follow it up with a loss probably again next weekend, knowing Roma. But it's
No
typical
doubt.
Mourinho. Typical Mourinho.
Yeah, well, it's kind of it's a mad run that Roma are on now. So that's 5 wins at home and 5 clean sheets. It's like the best run they've had since 2007, 2008, I think the season was. No, 2017, sorry, was the season last time they went this long unbeaten at home without conceding a goal. The stadium now is consistently sold out. Now, something about Roma that people were always talking about was, it's like the stadium's
It's
huge.
empty.
They can never
Yeah.
fill it. It always looks crap. It is full every single game now. The owners... Like the owners there, Mourinho, have done a hell of a job of getting people back interested in that club and back into the ground. And it makes a huge difference. You look at it and you go, and then you look at the home form and you go, okay, yeah, that's why. Like when you hear them singing Roma, Roma, Roma before kickoff and after when they've won, it's just incredible. It's incredible. It's on my bucket list of stadiums to go and see a game at. But I thought it was, as we said, classic Mourinho. Juventus had 14 shots. I think Roma had like 4, I want to say.
Yeah,
5, sorry. But Andy, I wanted to talk to you about Juve because it's kind of interesting. Vlahovic had the fewest touches of anyone on the pitch. He had 18 touches. Adam did kind of say there, he came close, but it does feel like he's getting a little bit lost there. Do you think, I get the feeling he needs a strike partner? I don't know if he's the type of player who can do it all on his own.
I think he needs better service as well, to be honest, because as well as watching the highlights of that game, it was just literally a combination of mainly Di Maria just hitting it from range. I think the problem with Allegri, there's not much inventiveness in that team. They struggle to break down a packed defense, and as Adam alluded to, just lumping it into the box isn't going to work with a team like that. Although Di Maria and Locatelli has some good shots from range, you still most of the time expect the keeper to save it. And it just felt like they were lacking ideas, or they couldn't put together a passing move good enough to breach the defense. And I think that's where they went wrong. They needed to be a bit more overlapping, a bit like Man City do, overlap, cut back, try and stretch the defence a little bit, rather than just hoofing it into the box or cracking one in for 25 yards. Because although that'll work in one in 100 times, you can still get through that. Maybe that's something that Pogba will bring now that he's started to get some match fitness built up and he looked lively when he come on.
He did.
So maybe that will work itself. And he's the sort of player that can, when he's on form, unlock a defence and puts a bit more quality. And I think that's where Roma lacked. Because I think, Di Maria has been playing well recently, but he does need to add a bit more variety on occasion. Say with Cuadrado as well, I think could he have maybe crossed the ball in rather than trying to go for goal from the tight angle. So, I think it's just a lack of imagination, I think, was Juve's main undoing. And maybe that's a consequence of what they've got in midfield. They need a bit more creativity and a bit more, like a Pirlo figure. I think they haven't really replaced like a Pirlo figure since he retired. So I think that's where they're really lacking. And probably a new goalkeeper one day as well.
At some point.
There's always a weekly highlight of Wojciech Szczesny doing weird shit. He sort of comes out for the ball like he's Superman, and he goes, "Oh shit, I'm not going to get it." Stop it. All in midair, all at the same time. But look, he pulled himself out of it. That's quite funny. But I think it's very on brand for Roma, isn't it, to lose against Cremonese and and then pull one in against Juve. Very, very on brand.
Absolutely classic Roma. But Adam, sorry, you wanted to jump in.
Yeah, I just wanted to also say that Allegri has got a really good player on the bench called Federico Chiesa, who he refuses to play as well. Easily could be the foil for Vlahovic if he played him just behind him or beside him. And he just, for some reason, constantly doesn't play him or plays him at right wing back and expects him to do a performance there, which is the frustrating thing, not just for like general football fans of Serie A, but also for Juve fans, because they are screwing at him for just playing him in these random positions or cameo appearances like they did against Roma. So they've got the players. It's just the frustration of Allegri as well.
A 4-3-3 makes sense with that squad, right?
A 4
like you have a front three of Vlahovic, Chiesa, and Di Maria, and then the midfield you can have like Miretti, Locatelli, and Fagioli, whatever. You can have and you've still got your wing backs. You've still got your wing backs, Allegri. You've still got Kostic, Quadrado. You can keep them. No one's taking them, but you can just have two more up top. It does seem like when I looked at the formation, I was like, it was 4-4-4-1-1, technically, I think is what it was, a 3-5-1-1 or whatever. But like it just, it looks completely like Vlahovic has just stood on his own going, hopefully one will bounce in off my arse or something, because it's the only way I'm ever going to get anything. He seems so lonely, the poor boy. He should have come to Arsenal. But yeah, for Roma, a massive, massive win. And in the table, that does put them kind of, honestly, if one of these teams can just string together any level of consistency, they can really get a hold of this top four. But that does put Roma up into fourth, level on points with Milan on 47 points. And that being said, should we go to Milan-Fiorentina? I think that's the next stop. Milan-Fiorentina, now that is Italiano ball. That is what we've been waiting for. Yeah. This is what we knew he was capable of. They've been getting results in the Conference League, and finally they get a result against one of the big boys. Milan didn't really turn up, but seeing as you're in their shirt, Adam, I'm going to kick off with you. Fiorentina really turned up.
They did. And it was good to see. It was beautiful to see, actually, as well. That second half was probably the most assured Fiorentina side I've seen this season. I know we've had a few victories in the Europa League, which I kind of discount because it's just basically the league that I concentrate when I look at Fiorentina. Yeah. But that was the best performance I've seen them. Like you say, Milan wasn't there. They weren't there. They didn't seem mentally there. Like that was the weird thing, given the form that they had. Tomori looks a mess at the back, conceding that penalty, and Gonzalez picks himself up to score for that one. But like we'll talk about, Jovic comes off the bench and has a flying kind of throw at a cross and gets the connection, and just everything about the way Fiorentina played. I mean, it just looked like they could have even absorbed more pressure and gone on to score a few more. But they decided to, in that last 5-minute spell, just to basically take their time. If they wanted to, they could have scored more. That Teo goal, we have to hand it to Teo. That was a very well struck effort. It was incredible, but it was far too late, unfortunately. That was the only time that I ever saw them really threatening, because Ibrahimovic had his chances, but it was quite kind of tame shots. It almost feels like Ibra can only come on and do flick-ons these days. But yeah,
it was good to see him, though.
It was nice to see him. Nice to see him, considering the injuries he's had, which is like quite a big injury in itself. But yeah, Fiorentina, it was beautiful to see them cheerful for once. And Italiano, more impressed and happy for him, because I think there was a lot of pressure on him to get results, and that would have helped his time, or at least buy him some more time anyway.
Well, exactly. And he's a manager who was coming under pressure. I think people were starting to look at him going, Fiorentina should not be that far down. But what I saw it as, I was looking at like the stats from the game, and in terms of shots from within the area, Fiorentina managed to have 12 shots from within the area. Milan only had 5. And it just seemed like Fiorentina was they were so able to just run through that defense. And as you said, it was seen in the first goal with Tomori just bundling the guy down. They were just able to run through that defense. And it's something that we've been saying about Thiaw and Tomori and Kalulu. They've been really solid. And it all just went on Saturday. Whereas Fiorentina just defended their box so well, and Milan were unable to play through it. And as you said, just getting flick-ons from Ibrahimovic, you're going to need more than that. You're going to need a few, like we've talked about, stretching defenses out of shape and kind of pulling them apart. And Milan were just not able to do it. For Milan, Teo's having a hell of a season. He's having an incredible season. He's scoring a lot recently. for Milan, Andy, are we ever going to see them be consistent? I just cannot. Whenever you think they've cracked it, they just collapse.
I think they will get some consistency. Having Mike Mannion back in goal, I think is a huge bonus for them. Tomori will have much better games than he had against Serbia. That was a Stonewall penalty. It was just like you can't go in from someone from behind unless you 110% know that you're going to get the ball, and even then you probably still shouldn't. It's in the penalty area. It's I think again, a bit like with Juve, they just lacked a little bit of creativity. Really, I think they need an alternate sort of option up front, because with Giroud and Ibrahimovic, they've just effectively got two big lads, and you can only play like a certain way with it. I think they do, other than chucking the owl up front, I think the other alternative we've got is maybe to look in the summer for somebody who could break the offside trap a little bit, give them something a little bit different. Because I think they're coming quite predictable. Because if you can press like a reasonably high line and give too much space between Giroud and the goal, which Fiorentina did quite well at stages, I think that's where you need to have different options on there. Mm-hmm. But no, I think with Fiorentina, they've won. Obviously, what is it like? They've picked up 3 wins out of their past 4 games in all competitions. They've started to really turn it up again. I think dropping Luka Jovic, maybe that's giving him the kick up the arse that he needed. Because you look, a diving header like that, I know it sounds like such a cliche, but that's where you really want it. You're getting there no matter what. And that's the kind of, when you're not playing too well and you haven't had the rub of the green, so to speak, that's the kind of effort you need to put in to get yourself a goal, get yourself off the mark, and maybe that'll be the start of a more positive outcome for the rest of the season. Because I'm a fan of him. I think there's a good player there. He's just made poor choices in terms of football clubs. And I think maybe it could be a sign of a turnaround for him.
Well, I hope so. He was speaking in an interview this week where he came out and said the Real Madrid move was too early for him. He realizes that he's kind of lost his way a bit and it's time for him to get back playing the football that he enjoyed at Frankfurt and hopefully doing it for La Viola, because we've talked about how good a squad and how good a manager they've got there. It just feels like this season's just got away from him a little bit, but there's always next season. We do need to move on, and we need to talk. It could have been, it looked like it was going to be the headline of the weekend. Friday night, Maurizio Sarri returns to Naples, and Lazio, bloody hell, their record against the top teams now. I'm just going to go through it. So they have beaten Napoli 1-0 away. They've beaten Milan 4-0 at home. They've beaten Roma 1-0 away, technically. They've beaten Atalanta away 2-0. They've beaten Inter at home 3-1. So their record against the top teams this season is unbelievable. And fun little stat, Anderson has scored in all of those games except the Napoli game. He scored in every single one of those games against the big teams. A player who looked so lost at West Ham, absolutely loving life back at Lazio. But Lazio, Adam, how did they do it? We'll talk about Napoli, but Lazio were bloody good.
Yeah, I think this is the thing. You always found that Sarri would kind of be intuitive and clever with the way he approached this match. And the one thing that he did was just compact the midfield, completely compact it. He had just willing runners, made sure that he would frustrate Napoli. Ultimately, Napoli had not a bad game, but they just weren't on the A game, should we say. They weren't able to take away or make opportunities count. Kvaratskhelia had a really quiet game. And, just the fact that Ficino, who obviously they got from Inter Milan, never really was spectacular at Inter Milan, but then has the game of his life.
Pretty happy for him to leave.
Yeah, exactly. They were quite happy with him in Gagliardini. They're probably like the ones to get out of the door. But yeah, he had an incredible game in this one. And that shot was like any other time. If he shoots that 10 times, he only gets that in once. And that one time scores past Napoli. And this is the thing. It wasn't necessarily a bad game, but you could see maybe signs of it when Di Lorenzo has to head it off the line. He backheads it off the line.
That was a hell of a clearance as well. Yeah.
And this is the thing. And then you've got Ciro Immobile, who seems really quiet at the moment since he's come back into the fray for Lazio. That's the only one worry I'd have for Lazio, is that since he's been in this kind of back from his injury, he hasn't necessarily performed well. But then again, look, Sarri, they had a plan, they executed it really well, and it's another fantastic performance. Put them up to second prior to Inter's win against Lecce. Yeah. And just to see Lazio that high up in the table is something that we haven't been used to for a number of seasons. We've been used to them being gluttony and being really poor just due to lack of foundation and maybe aspiration sometimes. But I felt like that was a really good performance. Lazio really pushing themselves. Let's hope they can keep it up, though. This is a problem. And like you say, they do really well against the big sides, but when it comes to the sides that it should be around them, they either draw or lose them, as they did a few weeks ago against the likes of Hellas Verona, etc. So this is the thing. This is where they get unstuck.
This exactly. I think Sarri has been really good at preparing plans, right, for big teams, like you said, preparing plans. How are we going to deal with them? But what he needs to be able to do is enforce how they play on other teams. That's the next step, right? It's been right now we impose our style. But I was on Twitter and I saw a fantastic analysis of how Lazio dealt with Osimhen, and it's from @theoddSolace, and he was talking about how Sarri used the part of this plan was using the wing backs, and they tucked in completely. So they were basically two extra defensive midfielders, just completely filled that area for Napoli, forcing them out wide. Napoli just unable to get those intricate passes quickly enough to get through them. And then the way they marked Osimhen out of the game, it was almost like, because we've seen that Osimhen is a threat no matter where he is, right? If he's running off the shoulder, if it's in the air. And what they basically had was 4 people around him at any time blocking off every pass. So it was someone to get the aerial cross, someone to get the through ball, someone to get the ball at the back. And it was literally the whole plan around him. The analysis was fantastic. And you watch it back and you're like, oh yeah, I can see that. And they just, hopefully not many other teams are looking, because Napoli have to figure out a way to stop that now, because everyone's going to be looking at that as the blueprint. But they're the first teams, or one of the first teams that I think Inter kept him quiet as well. Yeah. But one of the first teams to keep Osimhen quiet, and he was it was a bad night for Napoli. I think for them this is just another one of a quick wake up call. Guys, it's not done yet. You need to keep pushing. But they didn't play that badly, Napoli. They weren't terrible. They just very, very indecisive, and couldn't get that last little ball. But you're
gonna get that over 38 games of the season. You're gonna get games where you're not quite on it,
and when you're 15 points clear.
Yeah, you're gonna get that. I think. So I don't think there's anything majorly to worry about. I know Napoli fans will worry because they've got PTSD from basically every single year that's happened previously. Yeah. So maybe they should worry a little bit. But no, there's enough evidence there to suggest, a bit like we did when they lost against Inter just after in January, that they've got enough within them to just get through that, move on, crack on the next game. And I think a couple of 1-0 losses isn't going to be an absolute disaster for them. But granted, next week against Atalanta at home, big game for them. That'll be key that they recover from that. But yeah, I think they'll be all right. It's just one of those days where you have an off day. Lazio defended absolutely brilliantly, and it happens. But yeah, nothing to worry about for him.
Nothing to worry about, I think. Also, I have to shout out Romagnoli. He was unbelievable. And I never thought I would say that about Romagnoli, but he was absolutely unbelievable.
Scoring own goals for fun, wasn't he?
He had such a good game. So bloody hell, where has this come from? Anyway, shout out Romagnoli. Elsewhere, we do very quickly. I think, where else are we going to talk about in Serie A? I feel like I wrote something else down. Any other games you want to talk about in Serie A?
There wasn't any spectacular ones. Inter back to winning
Inter
ways.
2-0, that was nice.
They controlled it against Lecce. It has to be said it was Lecce. But yes, Chanaloglu it was Chanaloglu set up Mkhitaryan for the first one, and then Lautaro for the second one. Fantastic hit as well.
The move for the first goal was unbelievable as well.
It was incredible. And Dumfries is back in the fray as well. A player that's been on the sidelines, been quite frustrated. Looks like he might be on his way out. Other than that, my friends, I think the only thing to call out, Sampdoria unlikely to get out of this relegation battle. But I'd be more worried about Salernitana not having as many shots, and they were the way side, and probably the better quality side. It's hard to say. And Spezia unlucky against Hellas Verona. They had loads of opportunities, just couldn't tuck one shot away. So, yeah, not a spectacular weekend, as you alluded to at the very beginning, I'm afraid.
I feel
Oh, sorry, go on, Andy.
Very, very quickly, Cremonese scored a couple of goals today, which is really nice.
Yes,
but we lost 92nd minute winner from Ferrari. They come back from 2-0 down and then lose it in the last minute. But yeah, I just want them to get a couple more wins. Like, they're putting in the effort. And I think, for a team that doesn't really do much, Cyril Dessers probably is putting in a bit of a shift for them this season. When they put in a couple of goals, but he does seem to be the one that gets them. So maybe, if Cremonese are in Serie A next season, I think he certainly will be.
Well, when they signed him from Feyenoord last year, because he played in the Conference League final against Roma, I was like, that is a hell of a signing. I don't know how they've pulled that off. And I think, he's gonna be in Serie A next year. I think he's a decent striker. Cremonese just always that far. 83rd minute equaliser as well. 83rd minute. Elsewhere as well, Monza did come. They went 1-0 up. They got dragged back to 1-0 against Empoli, but it's the rumoured replacement for Skriniar at Inter. Inter always doing it on a budget. It's getting the winner. There's some hope there for Inter fans. But yeah, not a stellar weekend in Serie A. I'm just counting them. 1, 2, 3. 3 0-0s, 2 1-0s. Bloody hell. Torino have just beaten Bologna 1-0 as well. There we go. Jan Karamo again. He is hitting some great form, that guy. He is hitting some great form. Love to see it. Well, guys, I think that's the end of the show. This week, we do have Champions League, do we? Adam, take us through Champions League.
We have got tomorrow Chelsea versus Dortmund is one of the games that I did look at. But whilst I bring up the other ones, we've obviously got the return legs of also Bayern Munich versus PSG, or is that the next weekend? Sorry. We've also got Benfica versus Club Brugge. I think that's fairly straightforward conclusion for Benfica, given the first leg. But we've also got Tottenham taking on Milan. Now, that is going to be the interesting game, given that Milan are winning only 1-0. And Spurs maybe slightly better. I don't know. It's hard to say. Milan aren't great on away from home. That's the problem. So it'll be fascinating to see how they play this. But yeah, I'm expecting Milan to crawl away with at least a victory or at least something to take them through to the next round. I don't know about you guys. But yeah, that's the way I see it happening.
I hope so. I think the big one's Chelsea-Dortmund. That's the one that's going to be really interesting. I think Dortmund always have the potential to fuck up any situation, and I think Chelsea, they really should have got the second. They really should have got the second at home. How do you see it going, Andy?
I think Chelsea might actually come away with a result. I think at home at Stamford Bridge, Potter really, really needs that result. I think if he could come away with a win against Dortmund, that gives him a little bit of breathing space. So I think it'll be a tight game because both teams probably can't afford to lose that one. In a hopeful shock, I could see, Pep Guardiola overthinking it in the Champions League again and playing Phil Foden at centre back or something, and then lose to a Timo Werner winner at the Etihad, which would be absolutely glorious. But also this week we've got the Thinking Man's Champions League on Thursdays.
Cool Kids Club. Are you ready for
the Cool Kids Club? Yes. So how do you see Sporting Arsenal going?
Oh, I am expecting a heavily rotated team. I'll be honest. I really hope we heavily rotate. What is going to be nice is Hector Bellerin. Hector Bellerin gets to come back to the Emirates in the return leg, but it will be good to see Hector again. I do miss him and his lovely face. I miss Hector Bellerin, so it'll be good to see him, but I'm expecting it to be, touch wood, relatively comfortable bit of rotation. Who have you got? You've got, I can't remember, Betis, right?
But Betis, yeah. Another Spanish side. Again, I'm fed up of facing them. Twice, we played Real Sociedad twice, Barcelona twice, and bloody Real Betis. Like, we're getting
doing a tour.
Yeah, pretty much. You've also got the hipster choices. You've got Union Berlin and Union Saint Gilloise. Sorry to any Belgian people if I pronounce that terribly, but there we go. But they've had they're putting up trees in the Belgian league in the past couple of years. So I think that'll be a hipster's choice again. Also, we've got Roma against Real Sociedad, and I think that's a very big game, but I think it's winnable for Roma, and I think they could get a result. And Jose Europe is always a different animal. So yeah.
Some good ones there. The Union in Belgium, they're also owned by the same owners as Brighton. So you can get a lot of very young, exciting players there. I did see when that match got drawn, Union Berlin versus Union Gilloise, or whatever it is. It was like, Thatcher would have hated this game. Whatever happens, the Unions are going to win.
The socialist game.
Absolutely fantastic. But guys, we are going to end the show there with a Thatcher reference. There you go. I didn't see that happening this episode.
It should happen again, but
but we will see you on Friday after all that Champions League and Europa League action. Guys, anything to say before we go?
That's beautiful.
No, all good.
Okay, it's time for the wave, guys. We will see you later, guys. Thanks for joining us. See you on Friday.